Hello, Dennis.
Yeah, Neil, isn't it?
It sure is. How are you, mate?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, buddy. Sorry about the delay getting to you. Just been pretty busy.
That's okay. I know what it's like.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you, mate? You're in Victoria, are you?
No, I'm in Queensland. I'm a Queenslander up near Gympie.
Oh, yeah. Home of the famous Gympie Pyramid.
That's all gone now. That got wiped out by the bypass road, I think.
Yeah, right.
I think there's different stories about that, but anyway.
Yeah. Oh, just another mystery.
Yeah. Well, some said it was, some said it wasn't. I never went into it that much, but
There was a few artefacts from there. There's a baboon statue, I think, in the museum there that was meant to have come from there.
Yeah, that apparently did come from there, but I don't know. I never even saw it. I've driven past the area plenty of times. You have to go in off the road a bit, I think, to see it.
Yeah.
But I think it's been destroyed by the bypass, so
That'll fix the end of that.
Yeah, they wouldn't have put a bypass through the Cheops or whatever, would they? I wouldn't have thought. But,
no, but if you actually see any modern day footage of Egypt, Cairo is so close to those pyramids, it's not funny.
I know, it's a bit disappointing, isn't it, when you look at it? From some angles, it just looks like it's completely isolated out in the sands, and then if you see it from the other angle, there's all the skyscrapers and so on.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So your son was on holiday in Victoria, was he? Is that what happened?
No, he lived in Victoria at that stage. Just as far as I can tell, was probably, he told me sometime afterwards. Well, it wasn't long afterwards, but he just sort of told me matter-of-factly. He's very reliable. This is one of the reasons I thought I'd get onto you, because after he'd spoken to me, I was sure that he'd seen something pretty special, pretty unusual.
Yeah.
He's a very reliable character, and he was just sort of a little bit offhand about it in a way. He said to me, because he lived down there, he lived at, him and his girlfriend lived near Epping there somewhere.
Right.
And they used to do a lot of camping. And the strange part about it is my name's Dennis O'Brien, and he's obviously Aidan O'Brien, and it was the place where he saw this thing was O'Brien's Crossing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was and I think that was one of the. He said to me, you wouldn't guess where I'd actually saw this thing, and I'd never even heard of O'Brien's Crossing, and they'd gone camping out there, and that was the intention. And of course, her parents lived up. The girl lived up near Ballarat or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Or Bendigo, I'll get mixed up with the two. But anyway, I've been there, but I just forget now. And yeah, they were camping when they saw it anyway. Well, they were getting ready to camp. But what it was he said to me, it's not a big story, it's a very short story, but knowing him, I thought it's a kind of a certain amount of quality to it. You there?
Yeah, I'm here listening, mate.
Yeah, sorry, I just sometimes I get bad reception here, but anyway, they'd gone camping at this, or decided to camp this particular night at O'Brien's Crossing. They'd never been there before, so they were cruising around. They got a bit lost, and it was late afternoon. Matter of fact, it was getting dark, because he said he went over. They parked the car. He can't remember exactly why they stopped. They were lost. They were looking for the place. This O'Brien's Crossing. I don't know, have you been there?
No, mate.
Crossing? Yeah, I brought it up on Google Earth, and gee, it's rugged country. Like, there's a big area there of forest. It appears to go back up into the hills and rugged, densely forested country.
So this is in eastern Victoria or western Victoria? Eastern Melbourne?
No, well, I would say I didn't look at it with respect to Melbourne. I just brought it up. Have a look on Google Earth anyway. But I think it's north. It'd be northwest of Melbourne itself. I think up in that area.
Yep.
But I can't remember when I brought it up on Google Earth only the other night before I decided to give you a call.
Yep.
I didn't take too much notice of exactly where it was. I'd assumed I'd seen it somewhere near Hanging Rock somewhere.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where that area is.
It wasn't there. It was a fair way from there, because that's where they used to sort of hang out around there, that wood end and that.
Yep.
But he just said, and I got all the info off him because I thought I got to tell you. He'd probably never get around to it. He's, he just that's Aidan, but he's a good bloke, but he's a very laid back fella. And they stopped the car because they'd got lost. They couldn't find this place, and they're due to camp there that night. And it's free camping. It's a free camping place. And when you go on Google Earth, it actually shows you this crossing. It gives a 360-degree photo of this crossing, which is kind of handy and gave me the idea of how rugged the country is.
Yeah, okay.
It's a bit like, in Tassie, where you can't see a metre into the bush. It's just so thick.
Yep.
And that's what people don't realise, I think, too, is how easily it is for these animals, if they exist, to hide.
Yeah, that's it.
Even in a relatively small area of bush, you wouldn't know they were there for years. And anyway, he went across and he had the torch, and I don't know what he was going. They were looking for it. He shines the torch down into this bit of a drop-off, bit of a gully, or a decent sort of a gully. And this thing more or less walked past him and scared the living daylights out of him, because he said, the first thing he said to me was it was so big, But then, if I was out doing something like that and a German Shepherd walked past me, I'd be pretty scared too, because he can take a chunk out of you,
Absolutely.
So, but that was the first thing he said, and he said that every time I spoke to him about it, was the size impressed him, and he saw the stripes on the rump as it was going away sort of from him. He didn't get a good look at the head, apart from just sort of a dog, like that type of thing as far as he was concerned. But he was, like a lot of these people who have these sightings that I've seen, they're almost in a sort of a shock. Later on, they try and assess what it was. He knew straight away what it was, because he knew what a thylacine looked like.
Yep.
Aidan wasn't a person that had to go back and Google it. He'd seen pictures of thylacines and so on, but he wasn't a thylacine enthusiast at all. He knew that I was kind of interested in them. That's the only reason he'd probably seen the pictures, because probably something to do with me.
Yep.
But
probably the only reason he told you about it too.
Well, he told me, it wasn't as if he got back, rang me up and said, "Hey, Dad, I've seen a thylacine." It was some time later, and he said, "Oh, by the way, when we were camping up at such and such, I saw what I'm pretty sure, but, you can never be 100% sure, was a thylacine." And, it had the usual, the size thing was interesting. And I said, "Well, how far away from it were you?" And he said, "Well, probably maybe maximum 20 feet. That's all." That's why it scared him so much, because it was close.
If it wanted to have a chunk of him, it could have easily had a go.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm not a scaredy cat, but I do find savage dogs a bit scary, because and I don't know whether he's inherited from me, but he's not real that keen on that type of savage carnivore of that size. Well, obviously a carnivore when they're that size. But, it's a short story, but I would call it from my point of view, you're the expert, but I would call it a quality sighting from my point of view, knowing Aidan. He's not the sort of bloke that makes up stories.
Yeah, and he's got nothing to gain by doing so anyway.
Nah. No, he just thought it might be of interest to me. When he told me, I said, "Hey, bloody hell, mate."
You're in the special club now.
Yeah, well, that's why. I don't know how long ago he told me. The reason I didn't get onto you was I didn't know that your organisation, I'm not even sure if it did exist then. I'd occasionally looked over the years to see if there were any sightings. I've never seen anything.
What year was
But
his sighting?
Sorry?
What year did he have this sighting?
I worked, I think 2019, because it was before COVID. And then
Okay.
they got stuck in Melbourne with COVID, and when they eventually managed, they came up a year ago, or under a year ago, when they got out, if you like, and they both moved up. She's like I say, a Victorian girl. He was down there. Well, originally he was with another girl, and then he met her down there. So he's always a Queenslander, and he sort of wanted to get back here because the weather was a bit rough down there. But,
sure. Anyway, mate, I'm glad to share a bit of political camaraderie with you, because I couldn't agree with you anymore.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to the Thylacine, I don't know what his politics were, but I'd call it a quality sighting from my point of view, from a layman's point of view. Otherwise, I wouldn't have rang you up. I wouldn't have wasted your time. So
no, that's all good, mate. No, I get bits and pieces from all over the joint, and it's the last 6 months has been phenomenal. That's why I've been putting out so many interviews, because there's so many people coming forward that want to share their info. So why not?
Well, yeah. One thing I noticed the increase, because I used to look years ago, maybe a couple of times a year to see, but now since you've set up your what's the name? Sorry, the Thylacine Awareness Group, I think you call it.
Yeah.
That seems to have attracted people in, and that they've said, "Oh, I've got somebody to tell now." Whereas
Yeah, that's
before
it.
It was like, well, I don't want to be considered a bit of a screw loose or something that I saw this bloody thing, and that's. The other thing that people say is, well, how come they're always fuzzy pictures and all the rest? Well, by the time first of all, you're probably shaken if you see one, because it'd be a bit of a shock. You've got to find your mobile phone or your camera. You've got to turn the bloody thing on. It's only going to be there for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And eventually I think something's going to happen where it coincides, because I do actually believe they exist. This is just my opinion based on what I've read, even from people like yourself and the various sightings.
Yeah.
Eventually someone's going to be in that posse where this thing comes up, and they've actually got the camera there, and they can actually film it, and they'll analyse it and say, well, that looks pretty right. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think it's only a matter of time, to my way of thinking. It's only a matter of time. See, I was a dairy farmer at one stage in one of my lifetimes, and the area where we dairy farmed was thick with dingoes, right?
Oh, yeah.
We were farming there we owned the property for about 11 years. We were farming for 7 or 8. We leased it out. I saw, in the entire time I was there, I saw one dingo, and it was thick with dingoes, because the dairy farmers used to shoot their calves, because they're not worth anything, or knock them on the head and take them down, sneak them down, and just put them under a tree, or just near the riverbank where something would eat them. They'd rot away, whatever. So there were dead calves everywhere, and that attracted the dingoes, but you never seen them.
No.
And they were thick on the ground.
Yep.
The only time I ever saw one was when we were having a flood on the river, and he must have got forced up onto the flats. And he was 200 metres away from me. I couldn't even get a shot at him. And the other thing I think about this Thylacine, just my opinion, they say, you don't get one knocked on the road. Well, how many people, when an animal's been knocked on the road, and you're normally just knocked off the road, stop to examine it?
I do all the time, but I'm a weirdo.
You would. I would now too. If I saw a brown-looking thing on the side of the road, I'd stop, because I must be a weirdo as well. But, and if it's in Tassie, I would imagine within a couple of days the devils have pulled it to bits.
Exactly, they do. They clean. And look, even on the mainland, you hit a kangaroo in summer and leave it on the side of the road and see how long it's there for. And see how long you can identify it as a kangaroo for. It's not very long. The foxes, the crows, everything gets in there. The maggots, the beetles, and before you know it, there's nothing left. It doesn't take much at all.
The thing about it too is these animals aren't, I think it's pretty obvious, they're not plentiful. If the Thylacines, and I assume they do exist, they're certainly not plentiful in numbers. So there might be one Thylacine for every 100 or every 1,000 dingoes. And probably one for every 10,000 kangaroos, or perhaps even more. So they're going to be a pretty rare carcass anyway.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
they are.
and
And there are stories of carcasses being found on the mainland, but people make the mistake of taking them to a university or national parks, and they just disappear into the ether and no one has any recollection of it, you know? That's happened a few times.
Yeah, and I think the other side of it is if I was a farmer and I saw one on my property, I'd keep mum about it, or at least I might tell somebody about it, but not where I saw it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be giving them, because the last thing you need is the government coming into your farm. You want to keep the government away from your farm at all costs.
That's right.
Regardless of what they're interested in, they're going to bugger you up one way or another.
That's right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there are Tasmanian farmers, and I have heard stories of them saying, I've seen one of those over the back, but I'm not telling any bugger about it, you know, like...
There's plenty on the mainland that have those stories too, but like you just said, they don't want anyone to know because they don't want their farm turned into a national park, or they just want to protect the animals, so they just keep quiet about it.
Well, that's right, and that's what you tend to do, keep an eye on yourself. And, the other thing is I know of another sighting offhand, and this was another really quality sighting, because I don't want to give away, well, you're not publishing this. Well, you can publish the information about my sighting if you like, that's fine. But,
okay, mate.
Whatever you put, but no names, no pack drill apart from the first names, that's okay. But
Yep.
This particular one is very, I spoke to the bloke who works with the guy who saw them. And this was in southwestern Tasmania, and these guys, I won't go into any detail there except for the fact that they work there. Let's say they work in amongst that southwestern Tasmanian wilderness, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so you get the drift of who these guys are.
Sure.
And I knew his sister, grown-up lady, right, who was involved with something that our kids were involved with, and we were in Tassie at the time, we were in Hobart. So this guy, her brother was this guy who worked in that area, or actually worked in various areas, but he'd done excursions into southwestern Tassie, and he said that is the most rugged country. You couldn't believe how rugged that is, and how densely forested it is. So I said, yeah, well, I've seen some of it, so I can believe it. He hadn't seen, he said to me, they're there. He said, don't worry about it, they're there. And I said, well, how do you know? He said, well, bloke I work with, who I trust absolutely, completely, saw two of them together when he was in the bush. And he said to me, don't worry. He said, I haven't seen any. So that sort of made it even more, because he could have said himself, well, I've seen one, or not. You know, he just said, no, I haven't seen any, despite working in that area all the time.
Yeah.
But he said this bloke saw them at close range, very close range, and he saw two. So and he said, don't worry, they're not gone. That was pretty much his words. I might be paraphrasing a bit, but that's pretty much what he said.
Yeah.
So that to me was another. Well, that was before Aidan had seen this. That was before the Aidan incident. So after I was talking to her and him, the sister and the brother, he was a very believable guy, and he said, yeah, my colleague who I work with saw two, and that's the only sighting he's had, and he was older than him. He'd been working there for years. So that made me think, well, you know, close range, you couldn't mistake the damn thing for anything else.
No.
Particularly two of them.
Yeah, the odds are pretty good that you're on the money.
But that's southwestern Tasmania, like, people don't understand. And even if when you get, say, you drive through to Strawn from Hobart, and then go up from Strawn up to, what's the first place you hit, pretty much due north of Strawn.
Oh.
That is the most. You wouldn't see anything in there.
It's thick as. It's just thick.
It's just, yeah, where it isn't forest, it's that, as you would know, you live in Tassie, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, it's that sort of heath, you'd probably call it, which is higher than a dog's back, like far higher than a dog's back. You wouldn't see anything in there. If these things, and let's face it, probably in 100 sightings, they would see you. There'd be one sighting where you would see them before they saw you.
Yeah.
they're going to see you first. They got the senses, they got the eyesight, they got the smell.
Yeah.
They're going to see you, and they're just going to slink away. I should imagine that's what I imagine a thylacine doing, a lot of slinking.
Yeah, well, they've got a fantastic sense of smell, and I think they can smell something coming for a long time before it gets there. But they look like a dog, they act like a cat, and they run like a horse. So they've got a few things going in their favour there that make them pretty unique and adaptable to the landscape. I've got a guy in South Australia who hasn't seen one, but he saw this kangaroo in a national park with its throat ripped out, but it was on the other side of the river. He couldn't do nothing for it, and it was still hopping around with this throat injury. Well, he lives near the area, and he's been down this same road twice in the last couple of weeks. He's seen 2 roadkills that were fresh roadkills in the morning when he went to work, and when he come home, the friggin' heads are missing.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is typical thylacine feeding pattern, and we've had that all over Australia. Kangaroos and wallabies with their head missing and their lungs gone. Well, it's certainly...
I remember reading about that somewhere,
you know,
probably in one of your things.
Yeah, if that's a cat, I don't want to bump into it. That's a bloody big cat to take down an adult kangaroo and tear its head off. And it's not a dog, it's not a dingo. Dingoes don't feed like that, so what is it, you know?
Yeah, and the other thing is, because I read your recent thing about the Marsupial lion,
Yeah.
right? And that made me think a bit about, because Hayden didn't get a good look at the head of this thing, apart from he thought it was something like a dog, it was going away from him. So I can imagine if he's shining a torch down into the gully looking, when they eventually found O'Brien's Crossing, by the way, it was closed and they couldn't camp there. But anyway, they were looking, is this thing, as he said, walk past him, basically. That was his feeling, walk past him and away from him. And I thought, and he said, the way he said it was so big made me, when I read that thing you said about the cat, or the lion, sorry, you know, I don't know, to be so big, could it have been that? Right? But it had the stripes, whether the lion would have the stripes, because I think mostly they're described as black, aren't they?
Well, they come in all colours and shapes. Sometimes they got spots, sometimes they're all black, sometimes they're fawn, sometimes they're just a dirty brown colour. I think, look, you talk to a paleontologist and he'll tell you I'm an idiot because they've been extinct for 20,000 years, but those dudes look for things that are underground, not what's on top of the ground. And that's my argument with them. That they might be experts about what's buried, but they ain't experts about what's living, that's for sure. And there are too many sightings of these, you know, marsupial lion type things for them all to be wrong, you know. So
you know, I'm of the age where we didn't all go to university. I know I missed out on a university education, but a lot of us did. A lot of smart people, and I'm not saying I'm hugely smart, but I was certainly smart enough to go to uni. But I prefer people like that in a lot of ways to some of the modern people that have got no common sense. Like I'll listen to a farmer more on, or perhaps a farmer on trees, what he knows about which trees will grow in a particular area, rather than a tree scientist. I happen to know a tree. Have you ever met a solar hot water system or solar electricity system installer who's not pro climate change?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
People rationalise according to their own self-interest, and they do it even without thinking. It's kind of human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you'll never strike someone, and this is the way he's gone. He's now very much a rabid climate change supporter. I haven't changed personally. I think 90% of it's bullshit. And in any case, I think
I'm with you on that one.
If it is causing climate change, we don't know how much. There's nothing we can do about it, and as we've done for the last million years, we just need to adapt to it.
Yeah. If there is man-made climate change, it's deliberate. It's no accident.
Oh, it's no accident. There's no doubt. It's a little bit like
these
like
floods in New South Wales have been looking a little bit dubious with what's causing them, eh?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, there's an interesting amount of plane activity of military aircraft out in the Pacific Ocean, just flying around in circles, basically. And then there's
Yeah.
these weather bomb images of strange things happening in WA, and then there's the bomb radar systems basically all holding those weather systems there, essentially. So,
Well, I think the BOM is one of the most corrupt organisations of all.
absolutely, you're onto it.
Falsified data. I mean,
Yep.
during the 2000, what we call the millennial drought, we managed to just survive that when we were dairy farming.
Yep.
I did a lot of research, personal research on weather patterns here and rainfalls here in the Gympie area, because I had to figure out when the bloody drought was going to break by, and I figured it'd break in early 2003, and it did, because it had to, because it was so far off the charts by then that it couldn't happen. It was just likely that we'd get some sort of a wet season, and that's what happened. But I went back then with floods in Gympie area, which, as you probably know, is well known for its floods. It flooded recently.
Yep.
Records were kept from 1870, right? And so I knew all the flood levels from 1870 through till at that stage 2000, and the rainfall patterns, exactly what had happened. And I noticed that there was a slight drying off over a period. It was getting a bit drier, appeared to be. Might be just a long-term cycle, but who knows. But you know, BOM now take their records, because of those wet years, they take their records now from 1900. They've wiped out 1870 to 1900.
Yeah, because it didn't fit their fucking agenda, mate. That's why.
It didn't fit it.
That's right.
And they want to say, well, you know, like we in 1893, we had a flood that was 2.5 metres higher than the one that we just had, and they're saying that was a record flood. No, 1893 was a record flood.
Oh, it's climate
2.5
change.
metres higher.
Climate change. Yeah. We all need electric cars.
Yeah. And the BOM, I think, are very. CSIRO, we used to respect CSIRO. I'm an electronics technician as well. I used to work for the space tracking industry, and we had great respect for the guys at CSIRO. But now that CSIRO is corrupt as well. It's
a little bit like the ABC. I used to love the ABC, but I don't even allow it in my group anymore because their reporting is crap. Their subject matter is crap. Their sourcing is crap. Their checking of their journalists telling the truth is absolute crap. And I've fallen victim to that myself. You know, I've been
ideologues. They've got an agenda.
Yep.
And that's what everything has to fit their agenda. And
yep.
A lot of them too are so young and stupid.
Yeah, and that's the way they want it. They've gotten rid of all the people with any kind of brains and experience, so they can mould the young ones into doing the dumb shit that they do. Yeah,
and you know, when you're young, you're not. You know, you might be very bright, but you're not very smart. You know, like I know myself. You know, if I look back, I was lucky to survive those years in many ways, and I thought I was a lot smarter than everybody else, and that's normal when you're young. But you're not. You don't have wisdom. The thing that you do accumulate, unless there's something drastically wrong with you, over the years. But the only good thing about getting older is you do get wiser.
Yeah.
And these young people, no matter how smart they are, they're not wise. You can't put, you know, it's the old story. You can't put an old head on young shoulders, you know. And then if you add to that they're ideologues, that they've been brainwashed in left-wing universities,
yeah,
you got pretty dangerous sort of people who are more interested in spreading their ideology than getting at the truth.
They're
not investigative journalists at all.
Yep. No, that's right. You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more, mate.
They'd probably give you what you're looking for. I guess they'd give you a hard time. As you said, they wouldn't really... Like, basically, if the scientists are saying the thylacines don't exist, then you better say they don't exist.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to be persecuted because I'm going against the agenda.
Yeah, and that's why they have these ad hominem attacks too, where if they can't get you on your data, they'll try and find out something about you, or they'll just attack you and just say you this or say you that, and then it's just, as they say, some of the mud sticks.
Well, you got to have thick skin, mate. I got skin like fucking cardboard.
Yeah, I'll bet you have.
Yeah, I have to.
I'll tell you what, you're doing a good job anyway, collating all this stuff, getting it all together and analysing it, and having some place that we can go to where it's all together, and I look at some of the. I think you give everybody a go. That's to some extent believable. I guess you get some cranks too.
Yeah, not many, but I do get the odd one.
But some of the. I'll tell you what, the best video to me. This is just me, and I don't know what you think of it, but one of the best videos and I saw your latest one, which is the photograph of what you think is a young Thylacine. But that 74 video of that thing running through the...
Oh, and Wilpena Pound, yeah. Gary and Liz Doyle's footage.
Yeah, was that some sort of camping ground or something? And this thing was, to me, I thought that's got to be a Thylacine. Somebody said, they've got a greyhound and stuck a tail on it, like a long tail and all this. But to me, the way it was running, its gait, you could even sort of, just everything about it was Thylacine, even the stripes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've spoken to Gary and Liz Doyle personally on the phone, and they said the reason why it's a bit grainy is because it was raining, and it was transferred to VHS by the BBC years ago, and then somehow made it onto the internet, onto YouTube, and it's been copied and copied and copied and copied. They still have the original film of it, but they've never... I mean, if I went all the way up there and met them, they might let me take it and get it digitised, but they didn't want to trust the mail with it, and that's fair enough too. They were going to let me use it, but we didn't get around to using it.
Film from that era, exactly. I think it was 74, 76, wasn't it? Well,
73, I think it was, but anyway.
Yeah, well, see, we had a Super 8 camera. We were in Darwin at the time, and look, the film fades.
Yeah.
It changes colour.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, it's on cellulose.
It's not terribly great to start with.
Yeah,
they're probably Super 8.
Yeah, it was.
And by the time you start transferring it around, but even so, to me, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's amongst the best.
I haven't spoken to them. There's no way they would have set it up.
They just arrived. They were on their honeymoon. They're just driving in the campground filming, and out of the blue, this thing just ran out. It was totally random. Totally random.
That gate, didn't it? The gate that it had was no dog runs like that, no fox runs like that.
Yeah.
I think.
Have you had a look at the official online museum of the Thylacine on Natural Worlds?
I think so. I think some time ago. Yeah,
I'm sure
I have.
In the opening paragraph of that online museum, the scientists involved in that say, consider the animal endangered because we believe it's endangered, not extinct.
Really?
Yeah. So you got one half of science saying they think it's endangered, and the other half of science saying we got to clone it. We owe it to the Thylacine,
Yeah, well, that's the other thing.
And it's just a bullshit agenda.
Sorry?
It's just a bullshit agenda, the cloning thing. They got no idea about cloning a Thylacine. They just want to do their gene therapy and own shit. That's what that's about.
And also, they're self-interested in creating careers for themselves and names for themselves.
Because they don't have to go out and get a real job then.
Yeah, and if they can get, particularly, they'll probably, if they're going to clone it, it won't get cloned in a hurry. It'll get cloned over a period of 10 to 20 years because they're going to keep...
They've got $5 million over 10 years to create a cell. Not a Thylacine, a cell. One living cell, which will be a microscopic dot.
Yep.
So that's the big hoo-ha. Oh, we're going to clone it. Yeah, no, you're not. You're making a pinhead. It's not a Thylacine.
If they spend $5 million on actually employing people that know what they're doing to try and find the bloody thing, real ones, the ones that are getting around in the bush,
of course,
there's a fair chance you'd probably at $5 million and pay off. Yeah,
I reckon so. I reckon it would give them the answer they don't want to know, and that is that the animal's still there. So
where are you in Tassie?
I'm in the northeast, so I'm in about 2 hours northeast of Lonnie. So I'm right up the top right-hand corner of the state.
Oh, right. Yeah, we went as far as, let me think, the place that grows the, where you go out on the peninsula there. Well, we went to the Rock, the Nut, sorry. Been there a couple of times. You're on the northwest,
that's the opposite side.
Oh, you're on the other side.
You're on the northeast, yeah.
Oh, you're not. Well, so we've been to St Helens and up around that area. So, where do you think? You think that's the most likely area?
No,
Or
not
is it-
necessarily. I think that all of Tassie is pretty likely. It's
Yeah.
just the fact that the animal is rather elusive. It doesn't like getting its photograph taken, but every now and then it trips up and sticks its mug out when there's someone coming past.
Yeah.
So it's just a game of cat and mouse. It's just a question of sooner or later it's going to trip up and it's going to leave its mug out and someone's going to see it and get that photo, or they're going to run it over,
Yeah.
But instead of going to national parks, they'll come to someone like me, or they'll take a video of it and put it up on YouTube, and then the cat's bolted, the dog's bolted. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll be game on. So
Well, it's a little bit like people say, well, why aren't we seeing them? Why aren't we seeing them? And I said,
Well, we are.
Somebody, look,
there's
we
only
are. Well,
so
that's the
many
other
apex
point.
predators in a area, and they're one of the apex predators. They're not the only one, but
Yeah.
these
Yeah,
things
well,
are
they
elusive.
That's another point. You say they are. But if I was to say, well, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head off out into the area here where I know there are thousands of dingoes.
Yep.
And I'm going to spend a week out there in the bush camping, and I could say to somebody, I just about guarantee you I won't see a dingo.
Yep.
Because they're going to know I'm there before I know they're there.
Yeah,
I said,
and
there
they
might
don't
be
want to,
1,000 dingoes within 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 kilometres of me.
and they don't want to see you. They know you've got a gun and you're going to shoot them, so they're going to stay away from you. It's that simple.
Well, this is the thing with the thylacine too. See, anything that's hunted virtually to extinction, and I've got a theory, which is my own theory on evolution, that it's not just purely based on...
Your genes have memories.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a mechanism. There's a mechanism that actually learns, a learning mechanism.
Yep.
That they learn. Now, why, for instance, is a kangaroo when it first gets out of the pouch dead scared of humans, but not the least bit scared of cows?
Yeah.
It hasn't been taught anything at that stage. It hasn't been.
It just
never gets taught anything.
instinctively knows to stay the fuck away from people because they're bad news.
Yeah, now that must be because really if kangaroos were hunted by the Aboriginals for whatever number of thousands of years, and as you say, their genes learned that that shape is a dangerous shape.
Yep.
That guy with the 2 arms and the 4 legs, or the 2 legs. Sorry, the animal that stands on its back legs and throws sticks at you.
You got to avoid them.
To be scared of.
Yeah.
And I think, this whole idea of evolution just being purely based on mutations is wrong, in my opinion, without being a scientist, because I think we've got some sort of a learning mechanism within our DNA. I don't know how it works, and nobody will probably ever know. And, an animal that's been hunted to extinction, it's going to have that in spades, It's going to have plenty of that sort of instinct.
Yeah.
That human being shape and smell is to be avoided.
That's it.
Whereas you get something like in my particular property, I've got 6 acres here, and I've got a lot of animals that I can get within, I can almost touch them, and they're animals that haven't been really, like finches and things like that. But something like like on the mainland, it obviously was nearly hunted to extinction. Maybe it was, and maybe it's been reintroduced. We don't know, do we?
Oh, I think it's safe to say that thylacines were never extinct on the mainland when you look at the old newspaper articles.
Yeah,
I think it's always been on the mainland. I think the myth of them being released in Wilson's Promontory by some well-to-do naturists back in the 1920s or whatever, I think that's just a myth.
Okay.
I really do.
What do you think of the possibility of them being in New Guinea? Because I've worked in New Guinea.
Oh, look, there's every reason why they would and could be in New Guinea. But why would you go to New Guinea in that horrible, mountainous, tropical, malaria-laden, cannibalistic, bloody terrain when you can wander around Gippsland,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It'll only be if one of the... Like, I worked on Bougainville, and I'll tell you what, you're dead right. I mean, that is absolutely my father was in the front line during World War II, he on the Kokoda Trail. And, he used to tell stories about how rugged the country was in various areas. And Bougainville was like that. Bougainville was incredibly, or still is, of course, obviously, very rugged. So I know what it's like up there. And as you say, it's I've seen native women up there, what we used to call bush kanakas, with ulcers that eat down to the bone. That's the sort of thing that can happen up there when you get an infection.
Yeah.
It might seem like a paradise, but you don't want to get in.
No, you don't want to get.
You don't want to even do something like squeeze a pimple; it'd get infected.
It's like the southwest of Tassie, mate. You break an ankle in there, you're a dead man unless you got an EPIRB to get airlifted out. You're gone. Devils will get you. That's it.
Well, this bloke was telling the one I was telling you about who knows the guy, or personally knows the bloke that's seen thylacines. He said to me the number of, if you get up high on the first ridge, I think there's about 7 or 8 ridges that run crossways on the southwest down to the coast where it's completely uninhabited. And he said just struggle, like he's been in there and they've gone so far in there, and he said it's like unbelievably densely, like rough country and densely wooded and of course a very punishing climate as well, like with rain and cold.
Yeah.
So, you know what that Tassie bush is like when you get down in that area. You can't see into it. You just can't see more than a metre into it. It's so bloody dense. And it's like
mate, it's like that out here in the northeast, and every area that I go into is completely regrowth. But, it's been... We get a lot of rain in the northeast. You get nearly a metre of rain out here every year, so things grow really quick. They do well, I take my bag with me with my EPIRB in it everywhere I go when I'm on my own out there, because if something goes wrong, no one will know I'm there. No one will find me. I don't have someone to check into to say I'm going here today. If I'm not home by 6, come and find me, Yeah, and, and the cold would kill you even, as compared to here. Like I could be out in the bush tonight and it'll be a bit cool, a bit uncomfortable, but I wouldn't want to be out in the bush in Tassie. No, well, it gets to minus 10 at my place, so you know all about it on those mornings.
Yeah.
That's a regular thing. It's not irregular. That's pretty common. Every year we'll get, down to -5, -10.
Look, I absolutely love Tasmania, but what I'd like to do is have 2 houses, one in Tassie and one up here, and I'd spend the summers in Tassie and I'd spend the winters up here. That'd be ideal.
You're not the first person to come up with that idea, buddy.
Yeah, it's a little bit like what they call them, the snowbirds in Canada. They spend the summer, they have their houses down in bloody Mexico and Phoenix, Arizona or whatever, and as soon as it starts getting cold in Canada, they head off down to there. They call them snowbirds.
Yep, they just follow the sun.
Yeah, I know some of them personally too. My son lives in Canada. But anyway...
All right, mate, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Neil, and all the best. And if I hear anything, I know who to get in touch with now, and you're free to, any of that info to publish it or use it or whatever. I know it's pretty sparse. It's not a big story.
If I can, I'll edit off the highlights, because I record all these conversations, but what I'll try and do is edit off the highlights of what we've talked about and just condense it into one, 10-minute interview or something.
Yep, no, that's fine, Neil. And as I say, all the best and best of luck in finding that. By the way, I'm a poet. I wrote a poem on thylacines many years ago. It finished up getting published in Spain.
Oh, yeah.
In a university publication. So that was my first. I think I was starting to get a little bit interested in them, and I wrote this poem. But anyway.
We'll email it through if you want.
Sorry?
Flick it through in an email if you want. I'll have a read.
Yeah, I might do that. It was the only trouble is it might annoy you, because at that stage I assumed they were extinct. So
that's okay. That's fine.
Bloody hell. What's he on about? They're not extinct. I think it was called The Last Thylacine, so there you go.
Yeah, that's to be expected, mate. That's all good.
Yeah, righto.
All right, good on
Neil,
you, Dennis.
Take care, mate, and really good talking to you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. All the best.
See you later. Bye.
Ta-da.